Gaya Chaksurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachare Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Astyatya Desha Tarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad Puraman Supripraj Kacharja Stotra Sri Shrimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai
Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai
Jai.
Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai
Jai.
Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai
Jai.
Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gokupinath Sham Kund Radha Kunigiri Govardhan Ki Jai
Jai.
Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai
Jai.
Navadip Dham Ki Jai
Jai.
Jagannath Puri Ki Jai
Jai.
Mai Ki Jai
Jai.
Kamanamai Ki Jai
Jai.
Tulsi Devi Ki Jai
Jai.
Sri Devi Ki Jai
Jai.
Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai
Jai.
All glories to the assembled devotee.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotee.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotee.
Hare Krishna.
Gaur Premanande.
Hari Haribo.
Thank you, Maharaj. And thank you, Ekendra Prabhu and Tosipriya Mataji, for leading such a wonderful kirtan, kicking off this summer weekend with us. So, and thank you, dear devotees, for joining this evening to listen to the continuing lecture series by His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj, broadcasting live from ISKCON of New Jersey in Towaco. So as always, this is going to be an interactive session. So feel free to participate. If you like to make a comment or a question, you can raise your hand, or you can type it in the chat box, or you can just type in the chat box, I have a question, and then just easier to call upon you. And then we can go from there. So thank you very much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vastrate Shatarane Vancha Kolpatarubhyascha Kripasindho Pyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Shadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. My respects to all, and especially obeisances to Purushartha Prabhu and to Kamalini and to all the devotees. Parikshit Maharaj has been hearing from Shukadev Goswami that in answer to his question, what should one do, especially at when one is approaching death? And Shukadev Goswami has advised him that as death approaches, one should cut off one's material attachments. One should not be afraid of death, but cut oneself off from attachments to this material world. Now he says, Grihat pravrajito dhira punyatirtha jalaplutaha shucho vivikta asino vidhivat gopitashane. Let's see how Prabhupada translates that. One should leave home, grihat, rajito, and practice self-control. Dhira, the sober person. Dhira stachanamuyati. A sober person should leave home. And punyatirtha jalapluta. He should bathe regularly in a sacred place, punyatirtha. Shucho vivikta asino vidhivat kopitasane. And sit down in a lonely place, duly sanctified. If I'm not wrong about the grammar here, I don't know if Gopal Hari is with it yet, but this begins a sentence, as it were. This goes with the next verse. These are essentially the preliminary activities that one performs. Now, the purport, we started our Vanaprastha seminar last night at 7, our earlier seminar, but this follows right along. To prepare oneself for the better next life, one must get out of one's so-called home. That's clear enough. To prepare oneself for the better next life, one must get out of one's so-called home. The system of Varnashram Dharma, or Sanatana Dharma, prescribes retirement from family encumbrances as early as possible after one has passed 50 years of age. Modern civilization is based on family comforts, the highest standard of amenities. And therefore, after retirement, everyone expects to live a full life in a well-furnished home, decorated with fine ladies and children, without any desire to get out of such a comfortable home. High government officers and ministers stick to their prized posts until death. And they neither dream nor desire to get out of homely comforts. Bound by such hallucinations, materialistic men prepare various plans for a still more comfortable life. But suddenly, cruel death comes without mercy and takes away the great plan maker against his desire, forcing him to give up the present body for another body. Such a plan maker is thus forced to accept another body in one of the 8,400,000 species of life, according to the fruits of the work he has performed. In the next life, persons who are too much attached to family comforts are generally awarded lower species of life on account of sinful acts performed during a long duration of sinful life. And thus, all the energy of the human life is spoiled. In order to be saved from the danger of spoiling the human form of life and being attached to unreal things, one must take warning of death at the age of 50, if not earlier. So this is a strong statement of the Vedic imperative. A strong statement of the Vedic imperative. One shouldn't stay at home trying to be comfortable, being happy, surrounded by one's children, grandchildren, wife. No. This is what we think of as the ideal of retirement. I'll live in a nice gated community. I'll have all sorts of comforts and amenities. There'll be friends and relatives. And the Vedic sages, Shukadev Goswami and others, say, this is Maya. This is illusion. You're attaching yourself, you're at the end of your life when you should be transferring your attachment as fully as possible to the ultimate reality, to Krishna. Instead, you're keeping it pinned to what Prabhupada calls a hallucination, to something that's unreal, something that will not stay, something that has no permanent existence. And in this way, the opportunity is lost. So the attachments of this nature are so strong that elsewhere in the Bhagavatam it said that if anyone can get free from the attachment to wife and home, he can conquer the unconquerable Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this picture of how to spend retirement is so radically different from what Prabhupada calls the modern ideal. Radically different. At every step, actually, we're radically different. Their idea of childhood and education is completely different from our idea. Their idea is how to prepare one's life for, well, first of all, just to play and have a good time, and then be educated intensively if you're Indian, and otherwise not quite so intensively, for getting all set up for your job, your career, your position in the market, and then get married and this and that, but intensely studying for material advancement. Then you get married and you expand your comforts. And then in old age, you just keep sliding with it. You retire comfortably. That's their idea. And then you die and you take another body. But the Vedic culture, Gurukule, Vasantanta Gururitam, from the age of 5, the child should become a slave. That is, a menial servant of the spiritual master. He should be trained in control of the mind, control of the senses, the exact opposite of what you get at schools and colleges and universities. Then in family life, sense gratification should be seriously restricted. And in old age, one should get out of family life altogether. So a very, very different picture, because there's a very different target. The materialist sees this one life as everything, and he wants to live comfortably here. Or at best, he thinks that I should be good in this life so that in the next life I can go to heaven or be promoted to Svarg, to another body, another life. But we're propounding a completely different idea, that one should get free from all of these attachments. Anyabhilashita shunyam and anukulyena Krishna. Seriously cultivate devotional service to Krishna. So for that purpose, the vanaprastha ashram is a necessity, an imperative. One should free oneself from the attachment as soon as possible by the age of 50. In order to be saved from the danger of spoiling the human form of life and being attached to unreal things, one must take warning of death at the age of 50, if not earlier. The principle is that one should take it for granted that the death warning is already there, even prior to the attainment of 50 years of age. And thus, at any stage of life, one should prepare himself for a better. The system of the Sanatana Dharma institution is so made that the follower is trained for that better next life without any chance that the human life will be spoiled. Any questions so far? Comments?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, let's look at this. Everything is, this is a Kendra. Okay, let's see what's going on here. Everything is so topsy-turvy at present, not only in the human community in general, but also our own society, is still so young that all the institutions mentioned in the Varnashram system are only beginning to be developed. Meanwhile, it seems that those who wish to prepare themselves for the better next life are largely left to their own designs. Yeah, this is a topic we'll be exploring at length in our Vanaprastha seminar, the sort of gap between what our society is and what it should be. Find that we're in essentially first of all, we're in a generation that has largely, well, our society is young, but not so young. And we're supposed to know these things. These instructions, this is first canto Srimad Bhagavatam. This was here when we all arrived. Prabhupada brought it over on the boat. These instructions are there, but we haven't prioritized them. We haven't highlighted them. We haven't given them attention, the attention they deserve. Partly that's because, well, we were young, and when you're young, you don't look at these things the same way. And partly it's because we don't want to see it. And partly because, well, we don't know how to implement it. We see it, we think, yeah, but I don't know what to do. So the first thing to do is to take it seriously, to say, this, I have to do this. This instruction is there. And the expression is, where there's a will, there's a way. These instructions are not dependent on institutional support. Ideally, there is institutional support, but, well, I'm sorry, I can't go back to Godhead because I don't have institutional support. Somehow, those who are serious have to forge ahead. They have to forge ahead and say, well, let's start working on this. And the Vanaprastha ashram is set up in such a way that it does allow time to work things out. It's not an abrupt ditching of everything. So the first step is to say, we have to do this. That's the very first thing. We have to do this. These instructions are for us. And I have, not right in front of me, but not far away, a quotation from Srila Prabhupada from Bhagavatam, where he says, or it's Chaitanya Charitamrita actually, he says that the young boys and girls in our Krishna consciousness movement basically have to do this later on. He's quite explicit about it. There's not just some medical notion, but this is what he wants us to do. And there's a lot of instructions on many topics that we've not given full attention to. And had we given fuller attention earlier, we would be better situated. But better late than never. For those who are serious about going back to Godhead, those who are serious about making strong spiritual advancement, can take the, I won't even say hint, take the instruction here to heart and say, I have to do this now. It's just a question of how I do it, what step I take first, what step I take next. So our Vanaprastha seminar is going to be taking up these questions. I certainly don't claim to have all the answers. And in one sense, yes, because we're early in our development institutionally, those who take this seriously are going to be pioneers. They're not going to be as well facilitated as we might hope future generations will be. But that's how we got started. Our brahmacharis didn't start out with all the sort of support of an ideal brahmachari ashram. Our society has begun with people who said, okay, Prabhupada wants us to do this, we have to do it. Let's get serious. So those who take up that mood that we have to seriously do this, rewarded by Krishna with the benefits of that serious dedication. And otherwise we can find, well, because of this, because of that, and because of this, and because of that, and put things off and miss out. So yes, those who wish to prepare for the better next life are largely left to their own designs. So therefore we are talking about this. How shall we improve things? And again, the grihastas have a great responsibility to help support the vanaprasthas. And if they have, after we've accomplished that, if you have money left over and you want to feed the poor, then great. But meantime, this is a high priority. Let's see. Is that okay? Yeah. Then Venkatesh says, what's the idea between devotees getting high karmic education and use that education in preaching Krishna consciousness versus Prabhupada's vision of Gurukul for spiritual education? Well, this becomes a big topic, of course. This is another seminar. And of course, it's easy for me to talk because I don't have children and I don't really have anything to do with children. But I can simply repeat what Prabhupada said. And his position was that the young people that real education, Yatma Vidya Vidyanam, real education is spiritual education. Komara Atre Pragya Dharman Bhagavataniha. Durlabha Manava Janma Tadapi Adruvam Artadam. Prahlad Maharaj says that the human life is very rare. And therefore, from the age of 5 years, one should take up the serious cultivation of Bhagavad Dharma, because this human form of life is very short, but it can give one the greatest benefit. So Prabhupada's interest, the Bombay wanted to build a school. They were ready to come forward with the funds and everything and enroll their children. And Srila Prabhupada refused because they wanted to do a government syllabus school. And Prabhupada had no interest. He wanted to establish Gurukul, not school. So again, there's a lot that can be said. He called the mundane schools slaughterhouses, and often completely on board with Prabhupada's vision of that. I'm not impressed by the benefits of mundane education at all, or I'm not persuaded that our young people really have a better life because they've been through the machine. And not machine, because machine is one thing. There's a machine, you learn this, you learn this, you learn this, you learn this, and this grade, this grade, this grade, this grade. There's all of that. And then there's the social reality that surrounds it. What being a student in a 21st century coeducational school is really about. And it's nothing like brahmachari life, or even what the Vedic literature would consider civilized life. What the education that one gets is suitable for cats and dogs. So I've referred devotees here earlier to Arudha Devidasi's book, Homeschooling Krishna's Children, because the Gurukul opportunities are limited, and we've seen difficulties with our Gurukuls. The next step, what would we say, the next best alternative would be homeschooling. And in my list, at the bottom of the heap is your standard public or private education. So anyway, that's my mini lecture on the topic you asked about. Is that okay? Okay. Tulsi Priya has a question.
Yes, thank you, Maharaj. What you're talking about as far as Prabhupada's vision is with the end goal, aside from going back to Godhead, that there would be, my understanding is that there would be a separate Krishna culture, and that we would be the Brahmins, whether we're accepted by the larger society or not, that we would be living as Brahmins, at least in terms of preaching and sharing Krishna consciousness, deity worship, prasadam distribution, all of that. But the reality is that for whatever reason, a lot of our membership in the ISKCON society is integrated with the larger society, therefore careers which require mundane education, which require, you know, living a certain lifestyle. Even so, devotees are still very different than perhaps, you know, the materialists in the larger society. At the same time, we see that there is a lot of mundane influence that creep in. You know, we're all very clued into what's going on in the material world. We're hip to whatever the trends are and things like that. So, you know, it's not just, it doesn't seem like it's just Vanaprast. It seems like you're talking about a whole cultural thing that needs to be there for us to be able to even consider Vanaprast.
No, that's the first thing. It's not that everything else has to be there before we can even consider anything. And I can, coming back to Arutadasi, what was ISKCON's educational structure that she took advantage of for training her children?
None.
There was nothing. But she and her husband said, you know, we're not going to go with this.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to send our kids to the slaughterhouse. That's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So that they did something else. And ISKCON, other ISKCON devotees have more recently gotten on board and said, this is a good idea. We want to do this too. How do we? But they just did it. Mm-hmm. They didn't say, well, we can't do this because there's no ISKCON ministry for. The Subhad hasn't authorized us or given an opinion, or GBC hasn't done anything. They looked at it and said, okay, what are we going to do? Here's where we want to go. Here's what the picture looks like. Here are the resources we have. So what shall we chalk out? And something like that, there's a story, it's well known, that Prabhupada was on a train and they stopped someplace and someone said this would be a good place for a temple, and Prabhupada said, yes, Giriraj, someone else, you can get down here, and just dropped off. And there was no consideration that, well, we don't have a list of supporters here, we don't have a this, we don't have a that. Off, and you start working on it. So that's the assignment, that's the project, that we know what our goal is. It's to go back to Godhead. We know what Prabhupada's instructions are. If we have our eyes open, we know what we're surrounded by. And given all this, what are we going to do? And it begins by that understanding, and then by having some determination. Well, here's the instructions, we have to do something. Prabhupada, when he came to America, didn't have the support of the institution, this, that. He just said, all right, Guru Maharaj has given me this order, I have to do it somehow. And now everything's followed, thousands of followers and money and books and temples and all of that. But Prabhupada just said, I have to do this. So that's the picture. Now, there are some, as we review it, we'll find out that there are more facilities than we think about. For example, just to give an example, in America at least, most of our temples are empty. Temples that were formerly staffed by 120 brahmacharis or something now have a staff of 5 paid people from India to keep the deity worship going. Is that an opportunity for grihastas who would like to leave home and dedicate themselves to the service of the Lord at a holy place? Yes, it is. And even here in Towaco, our Vrindavan Chandra and his wife, that's what they did. Their kids were grown up and they could have said, okay, we have our place, we're basically set up, we'll read the newspaper and watch Star TV. But instead they thought, why don't we stay in the temple and serve the deity. So they've been, and practically they're the core of the temple life. So, and how many other temples are there where if you wanted to go long-term or short-term, they would say, oh my goodness, you don't need an R1 visa, you don't want a salary to send back to your wife in Midnapur or something. You just want to serve? I can't believe it. How much do you need? You mean you even have some money? For welcome. And you want to give classes? And you want to help counsel our grihastas? And we have how many centers in America? So there's, just to give one example, that there's an opportunity for devotees who want to do something. Our Sankarshan Prabhu started an online ministry. He's now, what would you say? He has disciples all over the world. He and his wife are traveling and preaching. He didn't go to the GBC and say, what should I do? He started something. And a great success. So if we're serious, then we look at it and say, okay, what are the resources available? What is our goal? What is the step? And start on the journey. Otherwise, we sit and say, well, I would if I could, and if there were some facility, and if this, and if that. And then death comes and says, well, get it out, that's really too bad, but time's up. Yeah. And my seminar is aimed at helping churn the pot so that we come up with better understanding and more ideas and perhaps more determination or conviction or courage or support. But this was the starting place. That Prabhupada is giving this very clear instruction that we should do this. One shouldn't stay in family life till the end. Okay?
Yes, I know it came out that way, but I did not mean to imply that we needed to have that culture before we could take Vanaprastha. What I was trying to say was that because for whatever reasons, the culture that we had initially in ISKCON, where everybody was living in the temple and everything was centered around book distribution and service, that kind of fell apart. And so people were filling the gap or filling the void with the outer culture, the outside culture. And so it just, we were seeking that. And so that outside culture doesn't lend itself. So that's
I understand. We're in a culture that's even hostile to what we're talking about. Yeah. You want to do what? You're crazy. And what about this and what about that? Even our Indian friends will say, you can't do that, you can't, that's irresponsible, and what about your family and this and that and the other thing, and you're throwing away opportunities and da-da-da-da-da, and 50 is like you're just getting started. The best years of your life are still ahead of you, and so many things. So one has to be serious. That's step one. Everything starts with being serious.
I'm going to have a lot of questions and objections, even if it's only devil's advocate for you in this Vanaprastha seminar, because it's just, I can think of a million things, and it does not.
Okay. Yeah. Gail isn't there, so somebody has to ask questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to take Jen's question here, and then Tina has a question. It would be easier to leave home if there was someplace to go. Any chance of a community set up somewhere? We actually have communities. We have a New Vrindavan in West Virginia that used to have, what, 800 devotees or something? And it's got like something, I don't know what the exact numbers are. A huge place with cows and land and so much facility and beautiful things, and it's empty, comparatively speaking. We have New Taliban in Mississippi, same story, just a small group. We have other places also where all it needs is the people. And part of my thoughts on this consists of the thought that, well, it started off with all these gung-ho brahmacharis who were our workforce, and the workforce sort of turned toward family life and the various necessities associated with that. Well, now here's your second chance. Individually, former brahmacharis, former brahmacharinis, here's your personal chance to get back to what was really a simpler and a happier way of life. And socially, here's our chance to our communities with people who are not dead yet, who still have energy, who have a lifetime of experience that our teenage and 20s brahmacharis lacked. So here's the opportunity to turn aside from further material development or just sort of sliding along into old age and decrepitude. While the energy is there, take advantage of these places. Take advantage of these places. That's, again, a starting point. Okay, we have you thinking. Good. Atina.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
I had a question about the ashrams. In one sense, there's a lot of different rules and regulations that are specifically laid out for each of the ashrams. For example, Grihastha ashram typically means children. Now, we do see a lot of couples in ISKCON where they are practicing nicely and growing in their bhakti, but they don't have children. And then Vanapras who are not leaving home at 50, does that mean, for example, say the couples that they're in the Grihastha ashram and they're just not following the rules and the regulations, or they're not considered in the Grihastha ashram because they have to follow Grihastha ashram, for example, and each ashram has very specific definitions?
Well, first, yes, each ashram has specific definitions. Now, people have individual situations. It's not that, I'm sorry, there's something totally wrong with what you're doing because you're a grihastha and you don't have children. They're, by nature's arrangement, some couples may not be able to have children, or what have you. There may be some reasons why they don't have children. And we can't just say, oh, look here on page 642, you're supposed to have children, and if you don't have children, then fie on you. Everyone has their own individual circumstance. Or some couples, they're just less interested in children. It's a social arrangement. They have companionship. That's really all they want, and they want to preach and preach and preach. And then we say, well, no, I'm sorry, you have to have children. And so I'm certainly not going to sit here and talk about what the grihasthas ought to do in this regard. They have their thinking. I would say if you're going to have children, get on with it. Don't wait till you're 40. That's the American system, that first you finish your education, then you get started on your career, and then, my dear girl, when you're like 35 or 36, then you think about having children. That's really biologically warped. It's totally out of sync with what what nature has set up, and the results will be unhappy, or one risks unhappy results with that. If you're married and have children, get on with it and don't not career. This is again the modern civilization, and it's not only Western, it's very strong in the Indian community also, that education comes first. And so first our daughter goes to college, then she gets her degree, then she gets her career set up a little bit, and then we start looking for a husband when she's like 28. It's just not smart. Expensive fertility treatments as a result, yes. And I've mentioned this before, high risk of Down syndrome. Did I mention that on this conference before? I was in San Diego taking a flight out, and there'd just been a conference on Down syndrome among doctors and so on in San Diego. And many parents of children with Down syndrome had attended. And some of these parents were behind me in the line and were talking about it. So in essence, one of the findings was that Down syndrome was, just a few decades ago, practically unheard of. It was very rare that a child would have Down syndrome. It was just one of those rare conditions. And it's skyrocketed. It's just way up there now. So many instances. So that was reported at the conference. And it was reported that a prime indicator for Down syndrome is that the mother has her first child after, I forget what the age was, 35 or something. But once you passed a certain threshold, first child. Now, if you had a child, at 35 or whatever that age was, and it was your second or your third or your fourth, that wasn't a risk factor. But to have your first child after that age just push the risk of Down syndrome way up. So, we've got it worked out that, education comes first, we get a proper degree, and then we start our career and da-da-da-da-da. But nature doesn't agree with you. You're making a plan which is contrary to biology. You're biologically out of sync. And, that's what our whole civilization is. We're out of sync with nature. So we've got big factories that totally destroy our environment. We've got this and this, and we create anxieties. We create food that doesn't nourish you. We create cars that run on lead that poisons you. There's one additive to gasoline, which I know this from Govardhan Prabhu, who's formerly in charge of energy policy for the government of South Africa. And there's some additive, ingredient in petroleum on which they did research in South Africa, and they banned it because it would cause birth defects and cancer and so on and so on and so on. And they brought these to America, to the American authorities, and the American authorities looked at it and said, yeah, but because of a particular trade agreement that we have with Canada, the American government couldn't do anything. And so those ingredients continue to be a component of what you pump into your car. So we do so many things that are supposed to make our life happier, healthier, more joyful, more prosperous, and we screw ourselves, basically. The one devotee was working on a project at MIT. He told me he was being partially funded by, I forget which American government department. They were looking at alternatives for disposing of nuclear waste. And the long and the short of it is that they haven't a clue what to do with this stuff long term. Short term, yeah, we put it in big vats and we keep thermometers in there and we renovate the vats as needed and so on. But they find that all the solutions don't work. The thermometers start to melt after a while. The vats become so toxic that nobody can go near them. One solution is to put all the stuff in glass and then bury the glass. You know, there were all sorts of different things. Just to evaluate these alternatives, he said, would take, you know, like 20 years. Just to go through it all and try and sort it out. Russia had, they just dump all the stuff in Kazakhstan. But this is what materialistic civilization is. Prahlad Maharaj says that the cure is worse than the disease. So anyway, we sort of got on a long discussion there, but Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.
The rest of this purport is also significant. Prabhupada talks about leaving home and going to a holy place and then essentially getting back into sex life again and having a illicit or unlawful family life at the holy place. So that's not wanted. Therefore, it's essential that one practice self-control by celibacy without the least desire for sex indulgence. For a man desiring to improve the condition of his existence, sex indulgence is considered suicidal or even worse. Therefore, to live apart from family life means to become self-controlled in regard to all sense desires, especially sex desire. The whole process is to drag the mind from material engagements and fix it on the lotus feet of the Lord. This simple process alone will help one advance to the highest stage of spiritual success. For its own sake, we're not looking just to see a ashram with a lot of people going to holy places and then wandering around the holy places, not knowing what to do, not engagement, falling into Maya. That's not an improvement. But there's a whole picture here that involves controlling the senses and being determined to be engaged in the service of Krishna with one's full energy. And husband and wife may do that together, or there are different ways of dealing with this, which in our seminar. Jan says maybe we could investigate how someone could arrange their assets to support both themselves and their families after leaving home, rather than just leaping. Yes, there's much to be said about this. The Vanaprastha ashram begins with the brahmachari ashram, where control of the senses is taught, and with prudent, spiritually serious and materially prudent management of one's assets. That there's much to be taught, much to be learned about that. I have a friend, Ananda Vrindavan in Bombay, who really would be good to hear from about these things, especially for the grahasta. Arrange your family life in such a way that your assets are properly used so that you can leave home without too much. But then again, the plans sometimes work and sometimes don't. Sometimes, like Prabhupada, his business failed, everything, Krishna took everything away. So on one side, we make our attempt, we plan prudently. If we don't plan, then what are we doing? And that's, well, okay, just in brief, an essential feature of life is keep your expenses low. Keep expenses low. I have another seminar that I should teach sometime, which would be an entrepreneurship seminar. I did some courses with another friend of mine who's a self-made billionaire, a Marwadi gentleman, and he teaches 4 sutras for success in business or in fundraising, or really even in managing your family life. And one of those sutras that I can share with you is keep your fixed costs as close to zero as possible. Keep your fixed costs as close to zero as possible. That is to say, for grihastas, it's wise not to spend more than you need to spend. And sometime again, we could talk about how to use your funds prudently rather than spending on stuff, on what Prabhupada calls unnecessary necessities, how to put your assets in, use your assets appropriately so that you have a reasonable picture of security, and at the same time, you're able to give charity. All of these things are possible, but it needs, first of all, the determination to do it, spiritual strength and clarity, and also practical ideas, practical. And the resources in our society are available. There's smart people who can understand look at excellent strategies, how you live in such a way that you've got the larger picture in your sights. You're not just looking at what works now, but you're looking at, nor are you, well, we want to retire comfortably. You're looking at Prabhupada's picture, how to become, ultimately, how to free oneself from family encumbrances, and at the same time, how to have set things up as far as possible in such a way that things will go reasonably well, that with or without a big ISKCON support system, be able to do these things. Are practical questions, but finally, at the base of all this, Krishna, what is that? Rakshasyatiti Vishvasho Bhoktritve Varanam Tata. Krishna will maintain me, Krishna will protect me. That truthful understanding that really everyone is living on the mercy of Krishna. And if I depend on Krishna, everything will be all right. That's the final conclusion. And I'll stop here because we're just about out of time. In fact, unless there's another, I really shouldn't call for another question because we're 3 minutes short of stopping. But if there's another short question, I'll pick it up. Okay, good. We're not going to jump into the next question. We're at 8:57. We're probably going on 8:58. Thank you for your all participation. Again, those who would like to take part in the Vanaprastha seminar on Thursdays, I think Madan Gopal will probably put the URL there as part of the announcements, which he's just about ready to make. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Maharaj, thank you once again for another very engaging evening. And it's quite interesting how the verses that we're reading line up with our Vanaprastha theme. So it's
The Bhagavatam is stacked in my favor.
Yes, it is. And we appreciate that you have also started this Vanaprastha adventure. For those of you who do not know, on Thursdays on a separate Zoom channel, I'll be pasting this here in this chat as well, but you can make a note of this if you're on Facebook, and if you know where I am. I have it as a post out there, and a lot of devotees have accessed it from there. So this is the Zoom link every Thursday, 7 to 8 with Jayadvaita Maharaj. And Maharaj, do you have this on your website by any chance? Perhaps it might be.
I do. If you go to jswami.info/itinerary.
Ah, okay. So yeah, that's another thing. Maybe if all the devotees would like to make a note, this is a very rich website, jswami.info. Maharaj's itinerary is there, and on the itinerary page, you'll find the link for the Vanaprastha class, as well as these classes that we do on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And if you like to read some very interesting, intriguing articles on social commentary or philosophy and so on, you can find them in his writing section. If you'd like to leave a donation, to make a contribution, if you want to join his mailing list and so on, you can do all that from jswami.info. And his contact information is there as well if you'd like to send him an email, if you have any questions and things like that.
I should leave you more time, Madan Gopal, with all these plugs. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's becoming part, because there are devotees who missed the last time when I explained all these plugs. So, and of course, Maharaj is a very successful book. We have a bunch of these at our temple bookstore, but the bookstore is closed for some time, so you can order it on Amazon. The book is called Vanity Karma by Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj, and you can purchase it. You can get a Kindle version where you can get it downloaded immediately. Very interesting read, strongly recommended. I think you'll enjoy it. It has some very good reviews and so on. You can go to Amazon and see some of the first few pages, and you can look at the table of contents and things like that. And upcoming speakers. So this weekend, yet another interesting and inspiring weekend. So we are doing all our programs now at 8 p.m. nightly. So it's easy to remember, 8 p.m. Eastern time. So Saturday and Sunday. On Saturday, we have Gopal Hari Prabhu, and he has spoken here before, gave a very nice breakdown on Vedanta. So he'll be talking Parikshit Maharaj's dialogue with Dharma. This is from the Bhagavatam. And then on Sunday, we have Amarendra Prabhu talking about the glorious life of Baladev Vidyabhushan. If you would like to learn more about these topics, please join us to hear from our list of dynamic speakers coming up. So thank you all once again for attending, and thank you, Maharaj, for keeping us going. And we look forward to hearing from you again and again. If you'd like to say a quick Haribol to Maharaj, you can do so. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Maharaj,
Haribol Maharaj, thank you so
Hare-
much. Dandavat Pranam Maharaj.
Haribol Maharaj, thank you so much.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Jai
Hare Krishna. Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you,
Hare
Maharaj.
Dandavad.
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna.
much Ali.
Bye, Kendra.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Bye, Ashmi.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Dandavad Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.